All right, so today we've got the pleasure of speaking with Jacob, and Jacob got his results not too long ago. Jacob, how'd you do?
Finally done with the exam. It's awesome.
Excellent, man. Big congratulations. Appreciate having you as a student in our online class for the PE exam. Appreciate you coming on in and talking to us and sharing a little bit more about your experience with the PE exam. So out of curiosity, had you taken the exam before, or was this your first time?
No, I've taken it a few times. I took it with the old pen and paper exam, and I took it 2 other times, and then this time with the CBT. And one of the times I didn't really get to study a lot because I had a lot of work that came up. So really, I feel like I've only really prepared for the exam properly twice now.
Right. That's actually really helpful because there were a couple of comments on a few of these videos we did in the past, where most of our students typically pass in the first time. So most of these interviews were typically with prior students of ours that had also passed. So a few people were asking for interviews with people that had taken it more than once. So that's actually great. It'll give us a chance to kind of share your story. But before we kind of talk about the strategy and how studying went and the exam went, I got to ask, did you already celebrate? Are you planning to celebrate, or what'd you do to enjoy it? Or
It's really awesome just to get my life back. I spent a lot of weekends and nights in your class just grinding away in my office with my wife, just out there having her life, but she was appreciative of, understanding of the amount of time that goes into this. So I don't know, just really getting to enjoy my weekends again is awesome.
yeah, it's nice having a break from crunching numbers and reading books, and
Yeah, for sure.
so maybe just that weight off your shoulders of, okay, this was my third attempt, maybe the second time that I actually had the time to put into it to study, but that's about a year and a half of your life. You finally get to just relax, get that weight off your shoulder, get your free time back, maybe spend some more time with friends, family, get more involved with work projects.
Yeah, for sure. It's good just to, you almost forget free time. It's like now that I actually am done, it's like, what do I do in my spare time again? Because I kind of forgot. So it's been really good though. Just to have free time and be able to enjoy my weekends and everything. It's been great.
Sure. Yeah, a little more relaxing.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
how about, so I guess the first question I'll ask, what were some of the bigger challenges you faced studying for the new CBT format? Maybe talk about, compare that to the challenges of the paper and pencil exam that you attempted prior. But what were some of the new challenges?
Right. Yeah. I mean, this might be a long-winded answer, but I mean, we can just go through it. So, I've taken other study courses for this because my old employer paid for it, and for the pen and paper, I was handed down a bunch of old test masters material, and their material is fine, but it's just a lot of information that doesn't really delve into the basics and fundamentals. So I was kind of struggling getting started ever studying because I was basically just working problems that had solutions, and I memorized how to do those, but I never actually truly understood what was going on. Um, so basically, I did that for the first time I took the exam in the paper and pencil, and then for the new CBT, before it was ever CBT, I signed up to do an online test masters program, and where they gave me fresh materials and I could start and I could follow along in the videos. I did all that in preparation for the pen and paper, and also studied like the NCEES practice exam, complex imaginary tests, which if you're ever on engineer boards, I mean, that's always the ones that people are talking about are those two practice exams. And yeah, I mean, I'm kind of fortunate that it became CBT, because if I had taken the pen and paper exam with my knowledge that I had from test masters, I wouldn't have passed the exam. Because once again, it doesn't, for me, it doesn't delve into the principles and the fundamentals that you kind of do. So I was working all these exams with all these formulas, and I really didn't know where the formulas really came from. I kind of knew what they were. And so when it switched to CBT, this isn't like an intent to bash them, but it's just being honest with people. They basically told me they weren't changing any material because it was the same exam. Which after taking the exam, it's not the same exam. So that's a false statement. And so I basically went to my wife at the time, and I was kind of freaking out because it became CBT. And I think anyone that's not taking the exam or knows about it probably is like, well, what's the big deal? It just changed to a computerized format. But for all of us, I mean, it's a huge deal because you have all this material that's tabbed and referenced. And for someone like me who didn't understand the fundamentals, I freaked out because I was like, I don't know how to do any of this stuff without all of these old books and all these like old materials. And so I found your course and I did the free trial. And I went to my wife and I was like, this really could help me, and I think it would help me pass. And so, she convinced me. It's a little pricey, but just being done is worth it. I mean, the one-time cost, it is what it is, but you truly get an infinite amount of knowledge that not only helped me pass the exam, but it really has made me a much better engineer learning how to take this exam.
Awesome. Yeah, I appreciate you being candid and kind of being honest with us. So it sounds like maybe some of the other material you were studying from, you weren't really able to learn from their solutions. You were more so just kind of memorizing, so you could answer those questions correctly if you saw them again when you were working the same material. But maybe it sounds like it wasn't preparing you to answer the questions you might see on the exam, since it wasn't a learning process with the solutions that they provided.
Yeah, I mean, like, just a phenomenal example for anyone. I mean, when you take the exam, you obviously remember some problems. We obviously can't discuss these problems, but there's just some in particular that you remember, and you then go look up how to do them when you get home. Well, there's one in particular. I don't know if I can talk about what the description of it is, but basically,
let's just in case. I would say just be general.
Basically, I never knew how to work the problem, and you go over it in one of the classes, and I was like, whoa, like that's how you actually do it. And so just like light bulb moments like that. I'm very fortunate that I've taken your class in particular, just because, like I said, I'm a way better engineer and knowledgeable than I was. If I had just luckily because I was always close to passing. I was always around like the 55% mark. I think I've heard 60. I don't know if that's true. It probably isn't. But so if I had luckily just scrolled through the exam and passed, I think it would have really been a detriment to me in my career in the future.
Got it. And just to clarify, which month did you take the CBT exam? Was it last month or?
I think I took it in July.
July, so last month. And how many were you on our monthly subscription plan? Were you limited package?
Yeah, so I took the 6-month unlimited, I think it is. Mm-hmm. And then basically I had to keep shifting the exam around because I ended up getting married 2 months ago.
Hey, congrats.
Yeah. And then my best friend was getting married in June. And so I had to keep moving the exam around because I wouldn't have been able to give the time it deserved to study for it, really. So I had to add an additional month to your package.
Got it. And then so really the first time you took the exam after studying with us, then you passed it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. How was you had a lot of fun at your friend's wedding and at your wedding?
Oh, of course. I mean, my best friend is actually a electrical power PE as well. So
great.
He knew how hard this was, and knew all the stuff I was trying to juggle at once. And it was that's the main thing. One of the things you talk about in the first video is like, don't get married while you're trying to study for this exam. And I was like, that's exactly what I'm doing.
Yeah, I'm going through that now personally. I'm getting married here soon, and I'm going through all of the wedding planning, and it's just as stressful and time consuming as everyone thinks it's not going to be for them, but it's just as stressful and time consuming as everyone says. And so, yeah, definitely trying to go through that while you're studying for the exam, especially, engineers with young families or newborns. It's not easy, studying for the exam. It's a full-time life commitment. Then we're trying to work in our other priorities too that are, pass or fail, we still have family, we still have friends, social responsibilities we're going to be accountable to. So yeah, it's tough. So that's congratulations. That's difficult to fit your wedding and one of your best friend's wedding. I'm not sure if you're in the wedding or not, but
Yeah, well, I was.
you were. So probably, I'm sure there's a couple of weekends there you maybe had to take a break from studying.
Yeah.
Awesome. How about what part of the engineering industry are you in, and what parts of the PE exam that you learned while you were studying are you able to apply now to your day to day?
So I mainly have worked as a substation engineer. I worked 4 years as a PNC engineer.
Power and
And
controls?
now, huh?
Is that, just to clarify, in case anyone's not familiar, PNC, do you mean, are you referring to power and controls?
Protection and controls.
Protection controls. Okay.
And then I've worked now about a year and a half in just physical substation design, laying out the substation yard, ordering material, et cetera, things like that. And what was the other part of the question?
Just curious about um, what parts of the exam that you had to learn when you were studying, what parts of that are you able to apply to your day to day, or what parts do you kind of see the common ground, maybe, whether it's transformers or substation design or the code
Oh
questions?
yeah, definitely the transmission line part of the exam. I've already been able to surprisingly answer questions for people on like charging current and things like that, which I totally would have never been able to answer before studying for the exam. I probably would have just ignored the message and kept on my day. Voltage drop was another one. I understood voltage drop and how to calculate like single phase and things like that, but I never really understood why it was single phase is multiplied by 2, or why square root of 3 you don't, or all these other types of things. So and really like transformers, understanding transformer connections is really helpful for when just knowing why is this a delta Y, or why is this a delta delta, or things like that. It definitely has been helpful in answering some questions that have come up for myself.
Awesome. How about how did you find out about our online program? You said you saw our free trial, your first sign up for the free trial, but did you find our YouTube videos? Did you see a blog post? Did someone refer you to us, or how did you come across us?
It was a few different ways. I originally was looking at some YouTube videos for, I think I was on the Complex Imaginaries site about symmetrical components. And then one of the recommended videos was one of your videos. It was like 2 hours long on transformers or something. And I was like, this guy's crazy. He's talking 2 hours. Transformers. And so I clicked it and I started watching it. I was like, wow, this really makes it a lot easier to understand.
Yeah.
And I was on Reddit and on the PE Reddit forum, and you were actually commenting on stuff. And I thought that was really awesome that you were helping those guys out. So I just Googled your name, and I was like, wow, he has a full-fledged like course. So then from there, it said try the free trial, and I tried it. I think like 3-phase circuits is like one of the free things, and like doing that course in particular, I was like, wow, I really never understood this. I mean, I knew it, but I never understood everything to go with it. So from there, I was like, all right, let's get on this and let's really just start learning this stuff,
Yeah. Yeah. It's a nice feeling, isn't it? When a lot of these topics that they seem kind of esoteric at first, where it's like, you can work them, you can get the number, but it's hard to really understand what does the number mean in the context of the problem? How does it compare on any kind of scale to other systems or similar applications? Yeah, it's a nice feeling, isn't it, when things start to click and it's like, wow, this makes sense. Like, wow, actually,
Yeah.
it's not esoteric. It's not overly complicated. And I don't know if you can relate, but in my personal experience, when I was younger, when I'd bring questions to senior engineers or more experienced engineers, I wasn't always satisfied with the answer I got because it just didn't make sense. I would kind of understand what they're trying to tell me, but it also kind of felt like maybe they didn't really understand it well enough. So they were just doing their best to convey what it meant to them. And then once you kind of learn, like you said with that 2-hour transformer webinar, who'd be crazy enough to give a 2-hour
Yeah.
webinar on transformers? But it's like, wow, it's like this does make sense. There are simple rules and fundamentals where if we learn them, we can follow them, and we can pretty much work our way through just about any problem.
Right, for sure. Yeah. I mean, I remember doing the three-phase circuits quiz, and I got the first question. I was like, oh, I know how to do that. So I got the first one right, and I was like, oh yeah, this is going to be easy. And then like the next two or three, they're like the same exact kind of question, but they're like slightly tweaked. And from there, I was like, okay, yeah, I don't really know what I'm doing at this point.
Yeah. What else? So you took the paper and pencil exam twice and the CBT format once, or the other way around?
No, I took CBT once and the paper and pencil twice.
Right. So twice paper and pencil, the old format for anyone that's going to watch this video, which is of course no longer offered. You took the CBT, the new format, you passed July last month. How did we do in preparing you specifically for the CBT format? And the reason why I ask is last year, I believe it was August of 2020, when NCEES said, hey, we already canceled the April 2020 paper and pencil. Now we're going to have to cancel the October, but we're going to open up the CBT format early in December. And then from there, it'll be every month. So for us, we scrambled fast, right? We were working full steam ahead to pretty much update all of our live class material on the fly to match the new format. And I believe we were the first Power PE exam prep service provider to do so. So specifically for the CBT format, how do we do? How do we do in terms of preparing you for that?
I think really well. You also just started adding stuff as the semester went on, like the AIT, which is basically, for anyone who doesn't know, it's like point and click problems or like drag and drop, things like that. Like you started adding that into the program. You had the random quiz problems thing, like 10, 20, 40 questions. All of that was really helpful. A lot of the problems are that you kind of give are worded such that it's more aligned with probably the CBT problems. I mean, all of your like live classes, everyone in the chat or you personally would always try to make a point, this formula is found here. I know for anyone that hasn't really delved in the handbook, well, one, you need to for the exam 100%. And two, you need to really understand everything that's in that handbook. And in the live class, we broke down a bunch of the formulas, where they came from, what all the variables meant. And, really all of that's extremely necessary because for me on the test, time was super short. And I think it's because I was really delving into each problem and trying to make sure I really knew what I was doing so you get a correct answer. But I mean, when it comes to was I prepared for the CBT because I took your class, I would say absolutely yes.
Great. What else? How about, so not talking about the exam, but you personally, when you were studying, what subjects were the most difficult to learn out of curiosity for you personally, just while you were studying and learning the material? What subjects were the toughest?
I would say electronics.
Electronics.
In school, obviously we have classes where we look at oscilloscopes, or we have electronic classes where we kind of go over what like a diode is or what a thyristor is, but I haven't looked at that stuff in years. So I honestly had forgot what a lot of the components and pieces were. And when I went back and looked at my diagnostics for my previous attempts, electronics was always my lowest one. And so I kept telling myself while studying, and I spent a lot of time in electronics, it was like, if you can get this one subject up, it probably will put you ahead, because it was really low compared to all my others were kind of close to the middle, but electronics was like all the way at the end. And I spent a lot of time on you have a 2-hour webinar on YouTube, I think, about electronics. You have a bunch of questions on there about electronics questions. There's some YouTube video, I can't remember, it's like the engineering mindset or something. if anyone hasn't looked at that, I mean, they really break down like how inverters and converters work. And in substation design, we spec out a bunch of like DC to DC converters and things like that, and I never knew how they worked. And so it was good for me to really dive into the electronics portion of this exam and really try to learn it, because there's questions that show you a waveform and I mean, I didn't have any idea how like certain components really worked. And so always those waveform problems were always so challenging for me, because I would just look at them and be like, I have no idea. Like, I don't know. And so your live class in electronics really helped too, because you kind of showed what happened at each like period or things like that. And it really broke it down, which was really, really helpful for me.
Fantastic. Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. We actually gave that class last night for the fall 2021 live class semester. Was day 2 of electronics, uncontrolled rectifiers, single phase, whether it's half wave rectifier, full wave rectifier, then 3-phase rectifiers, everything, from DC converters like buck boost converters, RL inverters. Your experience with electronics is one I hear often. Out of curiosity, how long has it been since you graduated from college and you got your degree?
I graduated in 2013, so it's been about eight and a half years.
So I'd say typically anyone that's been out of college about 8 years or more, you have to have an ABET accredited degree to take the FE exam. That's the first step. So every ABET electrical engineering degree, it's going to be a similar curriculum. But just about every engineer that I've spoken to that's taken the exam, if you've got 8 years or more out of college, they have a similar experience that you just shared, where I learned this stuff in college. It was part of my curriculum, because the ABET degree, it's not focused on power. It's focused on everything, wireless, power, electronics, controls, everything, EMAG. So you learn in college, but typically as power engineers, me personally, unless I was sizing a UPS, unless I was sizing, like if I'm working in a substation doing a project there and I'm sizing a battery charger or a power supply to get my substation DC power for my relays, the inner workings of it, it's a mystery.
Right.
And, it is a little surprising when we look at the reference handbook, the new CBT reference handbook, how in depth they go on power electronics. It's pretty in depth. It's almost to the level of the very basics of the design. Whereas again, power engineers, whatever the power supply is, it's a magic box. As long as it takes what I have, my AC input that I have available, and it spits out the power supply that I need, whether it's DC, right, for batteries or whatever the application is, I'm happy. As long as it's working to spec, that's most of the time it's all we're concerned with. So yeah, it does go quite into depth. It's intimidating at the topic at first, especially with the waveforms, and try to understand, how they're actually doing what they're doing. How about let's compare that to what were the easier subjects for you when you were studying? Maybe it was more related to your industry experience or more related to what you had studied in the past. But if power electronics was the most difficult, that required the most time, for you personally, which subjects were going smooth like butter, clicking for you left and right?
I mean, since I worked in protection and controls for a while, and I also had experience with coordinating breakers in like SKM on like a TCC curve, I didn't really spend a lot of time on protection. I did really enjoy in your class the sectionalizers and reclosers parts, because I never really knew about those. And so that was really helpful for me to learn. I spent a lot of time just going over that, trying to wrap my brain around it. But yeah, protection and control, I didn't really spend much time. For one, there's not much in the handbook. The only thing in the handbook really is like some ANSI numbers. So, I mean, you just need to know, I just made sure I knew those for sure. And then engineering economics, I didn't spend a whole lot of time, because I had a pretty in-depth econ class in college. I will say that because of your class, I know that there were some particular problems that I would have missed had I not taken your class in econ. You just give some tips and tricks that are helpful, and the test can be tricky.
Yeah.
They try to be tricky on purpose to see what you know. And yeah, econ and protection and control. I didn't spend a whole lot of time on those sections.
Great. Yeah, I bet your background in protection, I bet that was a huge help on the exam, especially now, protection it's been the largest subject, I want to say since about 2018 when they made the last change prior to the CBT update. And it definitely seems like they're, according to the exam specifications, it's protection and code right now is the main focus. So I
Right.
can imagine that was a big help. How about when you were studying? So you studied for a total of, well, we'll say you were signed up to take it 3 times, but it sounds like you really only had the time to study the most recent 2 times. But it sounds like you definitely put the time in, you put the sacrifice in. During that process, what turned out to be the most effective study method and what turned out to be the least effective in terms of preparing you for the exam?
Well, I would definitely say I kind of left working problems until the end. A lot of people say not to do that. But that's how I studied the first 2 times, I mean, all I did was work problems. And so I knew that going in this time, just working problems wasn't going to cut it. I needed to really understand the fundamentals. So I spent a really good amount of time on the power boot camp. Power boot camp and 3-phase circuits. That's where I spent a lot of my time really. And in like the middle months or the middle time before the exam, I spent a lot of time on transformers and motors. They kind of go hand in hand a little bit. I feel like some of the theory and everything kind of surprisingly kind of goes together on those two. So when you're studying for one, you can easily study for the other. But yeah, I mean, I really didn't spend a whole lot of time doing practice problems until probably the last month and a half. And I remember it was kind of demoralizing because I spent a lot of time studying, and then I took your practice exam and I was just like, wow, I did terrible on this exam. And then I took the NCEES practice exam and I was like, okay, I feel a little bit better now. And then I went back and kind of did yours and I kind of saw where I was messing up a little bit. But yeah, the most beneficial part of my time was really understanding how all the power formulas and the 3-phase circuits formulas all kind of jive together, because truly, if you don't understand that on the exam, especially the way it is now, you really don't have a shot.
Yeah, you have no legs to stand on. So it sounds like maybe putting the problems on hold, problem solving, and really deep diving onto the fundamentals that kind of overlap all the other subjects, and to really develop maybe that fundamental skill set. And then once you have that more comfortable, then you went back to the problems and you kind of applied that fundamental skill set to the various problems and subjects.
Yeah, I mean, for anyone that's looked at the handbook, I mean, they don't provide basic formulas.
Yeah.
But if you know the few of them, or how, you really dive a bunch into how single phase power, really all it is to get to 3-phase is multiplied by 3. Yeah. And when you get that down, because that's something I never really just thought about. I mean, I never really knew where square root of 3 came from. Kind of just knew it was there. I had a cheat sheet of when to use it instead of knowing when to use it. And yeah, I mean, with the way the exam is now, you really need to know all the basics, because it's light on content that they give you. Because I took the FE CBT, and the FE CBT, they give you so much material and so much reference that you can use. I took the other disciplines exam, and it's like everything's given to you. And so when they said CBT for this, I was like, well, I don't really know how they're going to do that, first of all, because of all the materials you have, but I would assume they'll give you everything you need to know. And then when I got the reference handbook, I was like, they really don't. They don't give you anything for protection.
Yeah, it's a little surprising, definitely.
Yeah.
And I want to circle back. And earlier, when you said the Power Fundamentals Bootcamp, you're referring to the mini video course we have that acts as the kind of the remedial class before we start live class.
Right. You have a circuits and a power bootcamp, I believe.
Which one do you like better, the Power Bootcamp?
I think power is more in depth, so you probably learn a lot more in that one. But I will say in the circuits bootcamp, you do something that was really interesting to me, was the the adding of resistors in parallel, how you just do the reciprocal sums. I remember I would never do that. I would always, in my calculator, I'd always do 1 over, 1 over, 1 over. I mean, obviously it's the same thing, but it never clicked, and it saves you so much time on certain problems to do it that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
So just little tips and tricks like that. I mean, I think anyone, even if you think you're above that, like, I think you can still learn really important like concepts that can help you, like even little tips and tricks like that. I think everyone should still watch those.
Yeah, I agree. That's great feedback. Now, when you were in live class, did we have the calculator up on the side of the screen when we were solving problems? Great.
Yeah.
It's what's amazing to me is, I think I've got almost every calculator trick figured out, especially now with the CBT version with those fill in the blank questions, how to use your calculator to really grab all those decimals so your number is as accurate as possible. Even last night in the power electronics class, one of the students in the class taught me something new, which
Really?
I was thrilled. I mean, that excites me, after, doing this for so long, it's sometimes it's kind of just the same stuff with subtle variations. So learning a new trick on the calculator was amazing. And then getting the opportunity to show that live as I learned it was fantastic. But yeah, every little trick on the calculator, I mean, it's really the only tool we have, when we take the exam. And, I'm human. I make mistakes all the time. I'm sure you saw me make a couple of mistakes in live class.
Yeah.
It's important to know what your patterns are, where you make mistakes. Everyone makes their own unique, set of mistakes. That way you can be aware of them, and you can watch it and you can catch yourself do it so you can immediately fix it. But my common mistakes is the calculator. So often when I'm just, spamming and mashing numbers, it's easy for me to write down the answer and go, wait a minute, I was expecting that value to be way bigger or way smaller. And then kind of scrolling up and seeing I went too fast. I missed the multiplication sign, or there should have been a parentheses there. So yeah, definitely every little trick on the calculator, man, it not only does it save you time because it cuts down how long it takes to do the problem, but it saves you points, right? If you're comfortable using it quicker, you're going to make less mistakes, or you're going to catch a mistake as you make it. So it gives you the opportunity to go, uh-oh, hang on, I need to put a minus sign there, or a negative sign there. So it gives you that opportunity to prevent what would have normally been a right answer, right? To prevent it, or what normally would have been a wrong answer. It gives you the chance to correct it.
Right. Like there was one you talked about the constants where you could just pull up epsilon naught or mu naught. And I mean, that saves you from having to scroll up in the handbook and find the number. I mean, you have it right there. So
lifesaver.
Yeah.
Lifesaver. Really. And you know what? One of the students in the last semester, or I believe the semester you were in, one of the students emailed me and taught me that too. It's like, hey, Zach, that's actually in the calculator. It's like, wow, what an incredible time saving. Because then you're not trying to, well, instead of flip, you're not trying to scroll through the reference handbook, trying to get the right variables. And, did I raise the 10 to the correct power for this constant? Is it, here it's just pull up as a variable.
Yeah, for sure.
What else? How about now that you passed the PE exam, if you could go back in time, is there anything you wish you knew in advance? And of course, I'll preface that by saying, not the exam questions, not the contents of the exam, but if you could start over now that you're on the other side of that goalpost, is there anything that you would have done differently? Any advice that you would maybe want to give to any engineers that are watching this, that are, maybe apprehensive about the CBT exam, that are getting ready to take the new CBT exam for power? But yeah, what would you do differently, if anything?
Well, I mean, I could say something that I did this time that I didn't do the previous times. I think going through when you first get the exam and writing out the numbers, and then writing if it's like easy to you, medium, hard, or an N for like code, for like NEC for code. Because I didn't do that the first couple times, and I kept flipping back from references like my NEC book to then I was working a regular like math problem to like going back to a code book. And for me on this exam, time was much more an issue than the paper pencil exams. I've read other people on Reddit and engineer boards say that time wasn't a concern for them on this exam. For me, it really was. I really didn't get to check my answers as much as I wanted to, but with the way the exam's laid out, you really have to, it's easier to go and do all the NEC problems or the code problems at the same time. And, you don't have access to flipping the pages to quickly find which ones they are. So by having the numbers written down on a little marker board, and knowing, hey, like 20 through 30 are NEC problems, for instance, I don't know. I knew not to look at those until I got the rest of the problems at least worked, because there was no point in continually flipping my eyesight back and forth if I didn't have to. So that's one tip I would give everybody. Another one is just, don't give up. I know for a lot of us that took this exam recently, we had spent months and months and months studying and constantly looking at this stuff. And you have doubt on yourself when you work a problem in like a practice exam and you have no idea how to do it. You're like, wow, do I really like know this subject at all? Because this problem seems kind of easy, but I just missed it. I don't know. Anyone's capable of passing this exam if you really, any electrical engineer is capable if you really just put in the time and don't give up on yourself. I don't know, when you fail an exam like this a couple times, it's a little demoralizing because you have peers that you think you're like equal level with and they pass the first time, but then you just have to remember it's just an exam. It is what it is. It's just the last hurdle before you can get that almighty stamp.
That's excellent advice, because I would say 50% of what I do is just trying to be encouraging, is try to motivate people. Really, it's a lot of emotional work to do that, because a lot of time, just like you said, it can be demoralizing. And it's true. People will take the exam not realizing how difficult it is and just kind of give it a shot, not pass, and then end up kind of stuck in this cycle, and they kind of get it embedded in their mind. Maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe I can't pass it, and that's not true. I always like to tell people, if you're already at this stage, if you have an ABET accredited electrical engineering degree, if you've passed the FE exam, or if you're in a state where you have enough experience where they'll give you a waiver, you already have everything you need. If you got your degree, there was one point in time when you had that math background. The math, when you learn it for the exam, it can be a little involved, but typically on the exam, it should be pretty quick. When you look at the practice problems, like from NCEES, typically it's just going to be a couple of steps. So, if anyone's watching this, after the fact, this video, if you're at the point in your career, you have everything you need. And I genuinely mean that. Don't think that you're any different from those that have already passed it. And another thing I like to say is, it doesn't matter if you pass it the first time, doesn't matter if you pass the second time, third time, fourth time. Of course, we will only want to take it once because it's a huge time commitment. That's the goal. Number one should always be passing your first attempt. But in the grand scheme of things, right, there are no extra medals, extra points, extra t-shirts, extra accolades, extra certificates. There's nothing extra you get for passing it earlier. The only goal is pass it. Pass it, get your license, get your stamp. I think mine's sitting over here on my bookshelf. Once you have the stamp, as long as you do everything you're supposed to, right? As long as you practice engineering within the rules and regulations and laws, right? As long as you're making ethical decisions, as long as you're taking, for Florida, every 2 years, we have to take, I think it's about 18 continuing education credits, which is nothing compared to studying for the PE exam. Once you get your license, it's yours to keep, for good reason. So it doesn't matter how many times it takes to pass. Don't be discouraged. Don't be discouraged.
Right. Absolutely.
What else? How about a couple of last minute questions, and then I'll let you go. But how about, what would you tell an engineer? So obviously we provide an online class for the Power PE exam. We're in a competitive space. There's a lot of other competitors. We've been doing this since 2014, but we're still kind of considered the new guy on the block, although we're definitely the fastest growing program. What would you tell an engineer that's trying to decide what program is right for them? If they've already decided, hey, I need the extra help. Hey, signing up for a class or a course or a program makes sense for me. It fits my budget. It's a worthwhile investment. I've got electricalpereview.com, us, and maybe these 3 other competitors. How would you, or what advice would you give to help them decide to figure out which program is the right one for them? Or how could you help them make that decision in terms of what would you look for to compare?
Well, I've taken another one, obviously, that I talked about, and your course I think is really great for someone in our age group. The videos are short. If you have 10 minutes that you have before you have to go do something, you can pop on a quick 10-minute transformer video, and you really feel like you learned something. You have these quizzes that other people don't have, at least my experience. There could be another group that does these types of things, but not that I'm aware of. You have quizzes that constantly challenge you. They constantly reward you almost. If you get them right, you feel better about yourself, obviously. You're tailoring your course for this new exam. I really don't know how to really even compare the one I took before to yours, because it's exponentially better for someone like me. I have a shorter attention span. And so the other course I took, it was like, I'm not kidding, like 20+ hour videos was all I had. And so, I mean, I don't have 20 hours, so I'd have to constantly stop. I'd have to write down the number for me, like it was like 90,000 seconds I was at or something. And I'd have to like remember that spot and have to go back and watch it at that specific moment to keep up with what the professor was saying. Whereas yours, I mean, it remembered where you were at in videos. You could stop in a quiz. The quiz would remember what problem you were on. It was just really good for someone like, I feel like me, who was kind of all over the place with like getting married and everything. I could just hop in and do like 1 or 2 things, and I could feel accomplished with it. The other ones I've done before, I never really felt accomplished with anything I was doing.
That's interesting. Kind of like it was maybe the other competitors, it was such a large amount of information at once. Did you feel like you were constantly starting, stopping, and then even starting over and starting over?
Yeah. I mean, it just goes a lot into too unnecessary of theory. This is one way of saying. I mean, we don't have to know everything that there is to know about a transformer. You break it down and you tell us what a transformer is made of, how the windings are impacted by certain things, how a high leg delta works, all these types of things that are necessary for the exam to know. But I don't need to know an entire textbook of transformer information. It's unnecessary.
Got it. Yeah, I agree. And I guess so. Last question. So I've been asking a lot of questions. What about you? Anything else you'd like to talk about that we haven't brought up, or anything you can think of, or?
No, not really. I just want to again encourage everyone. I know I watched these videos on YouTube of you interviewing a few other people, especially in the couple months leading up, just for inspiration. I'm like, if they can do it, they took this exact same class. They say the material that you presented was enough to get them over the hump. I know that was encouraging for me. And so I hope by me doing this, and hopefully if someone else watches this that's taking the exam, me just showing that I've taken the exam before, I failed. And by taking your class, I personally felt like it was what I needed to get over the hump. And I guess another thing would be, no question is worthless. You might work a problem in a old exam or something, and you're like, why would I need to know that? That's not even on the specifications of the NCEES. But trust me, anything goes with these people, and they're geniuses at knowing how to work a question in a way that you've never seen before, or you've seen it, but you've never worked it that specific way. So, no time that you study is worthless. Everybody always remember that.
Awesome. Great words of advice. And yeah, I appreciate, I didn't realize that you had watched some of these interviews in the past. So man, I can't thank you enough for coming on, especially because, a lot of people had been commenting and asking, can you interview someone for us that's taken it more than once? Just about all of the people we've interviewed so far, I think with the exception of someone else, just about they all passed on the first try. So your experience taking the exam, studying for the exam, a lot of people have been eagerly waiting for someone like you to kind of encourage them. And it goes right back to what you're talking about about how it can be demoralizing when you don't pass, especially when you have peers and colleagues that are passing, and it's easy to kind of get in that mindset of, what about me? Am I not good enough? Maybe I'm not as smart as I thought I was. Maybe I'm not as good of an engineer as I thought I was. And it's not true, right? It's just an exam. It's just an exam. So awesome. Well, hey, Jacob, man, appreciate you coming on. Congrats on getting married.
Appreciate it. You too soon, right?
Yeah. Well, I got it. I'm not there yet, but I'm getting close. Big congrats on passing the PE exam. Happy that we could help you get that weight off your shoulders now, so you can go back to being you and living your life. So thanks again for coming on. Thanks for being a student in our online class for the power exam, and feel free to keep in touch if I can help you in the future.
Okay, will do, Zach. Thank you for your time.
You too. See you, Jacob.
All right, bye.